purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei.
Hello and welcome to Freethought Forum. I'm Fahringer, the producer of this show. It comes to you by the way of a Time Warner studio and all my wonderful friends from Freethinkers Association of Central Texas. We try to bring you different personalities and different subjects, and we'll talk about everything. And I've got a really favorite thing coming up today. It's about Planned Parenthood. And my guest is none other than the president of San Antonio Planned Parenthood, Jeffrey Hans. Welcome, and thank you for coming.
I'm delighted to be here, my friend.
Now, you sent me some wonderful information, and of course you've been involved in this work, you said, more or less the health interests for about 13 years.
Yeah, I've been working in family planning and sexual health care for about 13 years now.
You sent me a marvelous bunch of material here, which I kind of thought maybe you could run through and tell me the mission, and you have certainly enlarged your services. You do a great many more now.
I was just talking to one of your friends before the show. 2001 will be the fourth year in a row that our Planned Parenthood here is having what I would call a remarkable year of growth and success. Planned Parenthood exists for a really, really simple reason. It's so that people will have the ability to decide whether, when, and how many children to have. We're so committed to this work, and we've been doing it for so long, 63 years here in this part of Texas, because of a couple of really simple truths, one of which is, in our minds, children deserve to be wanted and cared for and loved. And that when families can choose when to have their children, whether to become parents, and how many children to parent, a number that's consistent with that family's financial resources, that family's ability to rear children emotionally with nurture and love and care. We think that children will do better. We think women will be healthier. In even a larger way, the economy will be stronger because it reduces the likelihood that families in poverty will need to access public assistance. And in the most global way, it seeks to help ensure or preserve ecological balance for the environment. Just 2 years ago, the world's population exceeded 6 billion people for the first time. So I like to look at our work at our Planned Parenthood affiliate here in South Texas as contributing to a worldwide effort to give women the ability to make decisions about their lives, families the ability to choose the number of children to have, stabilize economies, and hopefully keep us living in peace with this planet that is home.
Yes, well, I wish that more people would give more thought to that, because there are so many large organizations, shall we say, that...
Well, and it's a big thought, and I understand the fact. I mean, I look at my own brothers and sisters who are raising children, and I guess whenever you've got kids and soccer schedules and school and jobs, it's kind of harder to think sometimes about the bigger picture. But that's what I like about having Planned Parenthood here. I mean, last year we served 26,077 unduplicated patients. Well, those are 26,000 different families that were able to participate in all that good stuff Planned Parenthood does by virtue of receiving services. And so I think it gives everyone a way to participate in helping to create the kind of world that I think a lot of us would like to see more of.
Yes, a healthier world, and certainly by rational means. So
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you this breast cancer thing now. You were recently awarded
The city of San Antonio gave us a wonderful proclamation in the month of October, proclaiming October as Breast Health Awareness Month. We like to do that every year because, well, number one, we think it's the right thing to do in terms of the health of women. Clinical breast exams, mammography, and early detection and treatment is what's saving women from breast cancer. And more women are surviving breast cancer today than ever before. And it's about regular routine screenings and treatment. And what I think gets forgotten about Planned Parenthood often, and it's forgotten for very deliberate reason on the part of our detractors, is that Planned Parenthood is providing a lot of general health care to women. We provided last year almost 16,000 clinical breast exams. And our detractors would like the world to only talk about Planned Parenthood in terms of abortion care, whereas, while we're very proud of that, there's a lot of stuff going on at Planned Parenthood that helps the community and the women and families who live here in many, many ways. So I was delighted that the city council and the mayor gave us the proclamation proclaiming October Breast Health Awareness Month.
And I'm pleased to say I was there to see you receive it.
Thank you.
But I
Appreciate
do
the
think
support.
I'm going to castigate the city now for a minute, because that was the most awkward thing, where they have people standing up there with their backs to the audience, their faces to the council members, but wobbling that mic back and forth. It was so awkward, and I thought, can't they figure out something better?
As my mother would say, it lacked grace.
Yeah.
That's her name, so she gets to say that.
How fortunate. Well, do you want to touch on some of the many services that
Yes,
you give here? Because
Planned Parenthood has so many services, and the way that I would like the community to help us think about and define Planned Parenthood, there's three main things that we do. All of our services fall into three categories. The one that we hear about the most are medical services. We have 8 clinics that we operate where we're providing everything from family planning services, all the contraceptive methods, to gynecological exams, tests for STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, and treatment of those, tests for HIV. So there's this clinical services, this medical component. The second thing that we do is we provide education about sexual health and responsibility in the community. We don't think that it's enough to just sit in these clinics and wait for the people to come.
In, yes.
Part of it is to bring a message of what family planning services do for a family, bring that to the community that would be in need of services. So community education, providing responsible sex education to young people and their families and their teachers and those professionals that serve kids in their capacity. Telling these people about sexual health and responsibility is the second really big piece of Planned Parenthood. The third really big piece of Planned Parenthood, and it's getting larger and larger, and it's not going to get smaller so long as our detractors continue to try to beat up on us. We will have an active advocacy and public policy arm that seeks to influence laws and policy with regard to the services we provide, contraception, a woman's right to choose, the content of sexuality education for young people, and the way in which medical services of the type we provide are available or not available to people of poverty. It's one thing for a woman of means to buy the health care she needs in the private sector. Women of means have been accessing contraceptive care and abortion care long before it was mainstream and long before it was legally available, because women of means, like all people of means, can buy what they need in a capitalist economy, which is fine. But what about the have-nots?
Yeah.
What about the folks who do not have the economic means to access those services? So part of our public policy agenda is to see to it that lawmakers don't forget there are have-nots economically who need these same medical services for the very same reasons that the haves need these medical services.
Well, the haves complain a lot about the lower classes and the street people and all of that, so you would think they would be very supportive of your Planned Parenthood.
Well, the detractors of Planned Parenthood have created such a difficult political climate that stepping out publicly and saying, I hear the mission of Planned Parenthood, I understand it, I believe it is a good thing, it does contribute positively to the health and well-being of the community. Our detractors are making it harder and harder for elected officials and public policymakers to make those statements of support. And what we're trying to do, and why I'm glad to be here today and to see you at City Council and to do other things in the public eye, is to try to create more and more space for people to say, you know, family planning services make sense. It makes sense morally, it makes sense from a healthcare standpoint, it makes sense from an economic standpoint. Every dollar that is spent by the federal government on family planning services reduces expenditures of other entitled programs by almost $3.30 in Texas, and the number is higher in some other states where the cost of living is higher. So it's pure prevention. It's about taking a public health issue, unintended pregnancy and parenting, where that be for younger people or adult people, and saying, let's prevent the problem before it starts. Because once it starts, once you have an unintended pregnancy, things start getting more difficult. Once you have more children than you can support financially and emotionally, things are more difficult. Planning ahead, preventing problems before they start, always makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. And I think if it were up to me, I would say Planned Parenthood could prevent a lot of abusive situations in families, because you get too many children and there's conflict and there's nervousness and there's a lot to do, and I don't know how people get. I had two, and frankly that was the best I could do.
Well, good for you. I do think that there is, for each individual person, we should encourage everyone to think about, what is my own ability to parent and rear? And if I can answer that question honestly for myself, the services provided by Planned Parenthood and other family planning organizations give me the ability to make decisions that control my life so that I can create the family that I can manage.
Right. Well, poor little, what's her name, Yates, Andrea, was it, in Houston, the one that drowned her 5 children. Now, talk about a pathetic thing. Too many children too fast. It does terrible things to women's bodies, for one thing. I mean, she must have been totally depleted of certain chemicals, and she obviously was in the brain.
Well, and it's one of the recommendations, that has come out from various healthcare organizations is that women putting space in between their pregnancies is very healthy for them physically. That is a better thing to do. Think about it. Whenever a woman is growing a pregnancy in her body is so dedicated towards the creation of this new being that it takes it out of her. And so having a break to let it get back in, I think, is a good thing.
And you don't get much of a break after the baby's born, because lots of babies scream a lot.
Well, I have 6 nieces and nephews, so I get to keep them at a comfortable distance.
That is a comfortable distance.
I love those kids.
Oh, that's marvelous. Well, I think being an uncle and an aunt is better than being a parent at times.
For the time being, I'm going to agree with you on that one, that's for sure.
It can get very, very difficult. I mean, I'm pleased that what I did, but I knew my capacity was that was it. I mean, you got 2 hands.
It's interesting. It's something that, every Friday morning we have a group of protesters that comes to the curb at Planned Parenthood. And we have a rule of non-engagement. We just simply don't say anything. We respect their right to free speech. But I'll sit in my office and I'll look out the window and I think to myself, I don't think the protesters really understand the lives of the women and men who come to our clinics for health care. These are good people making responsible decisions. Many of them are already parents. They are not people without a conscience and a plan and an ability to make healthy decisions for themselves and others. And I just wish that our detractors would respect the rights of the individuals that are coming in those doors to control their lives.
I don't understand why they can't see that. It's none of their business. I get so mad when I think about Congress sitting up there deciding about women's bodies and how they should deal with them. It's nobody's business. This is a medical situation, I think, and it should be between a woman and her doctor, a woman and Planned Parenthood, not between...
Part of the opposition, I mean, you can look at throughout the decades in history where the opposition to a woman's right to choose began, because it wasn't always with us. It was something that was invented at the turn of the last century. Just before the end of the 1800s, we started seeing anti-choice legislation. Anti-choice legislation didn't exist before about 1880. And when you watch it in the decades since to now, the interest in removing the right to choose from women, taking away that right to decide whether and when to continue a pregnancy or end it. It's generated by many different things. One of the things that's occurred to me as I look at the protesters on our curb, Planned Parenthood services allow someone to make a decision that controls their life, and it gives the individual control, full decision-making power, therefore taking that decision-making power away from government, church, state, whoever. The individual will be responsible for self. And I think for some reason, I haven't quite figured it out, but I'll come back and tell you when I do, I think that bothers them.
Yeah.
I think it bothers them that individual people will be making their own decisions about their lives.
Well, yeah, it's funny. One of my theories was that, well, people don't really have a lot of control over their own lives. You know, when you get to thinking about it, so many things can happen during a day that will change possibly even the whole course of your life. But little things too, the interruptions and the distractions and the emergencies and so forth and so on. And I think it's their feeling of lack of controlling their own lives that the only way they feel really firm and strong is when they can control somebody else. In that area, that particular thing they've got about children, I don't know. But it seems to me that get a life, you know, get your own. Go back and face those uncertainties and stop trying to make something certain from your point of view, which is bad anyway. I'm terrible about that. Well, now that we're on to the protesters and all, I would like to talk a little bit about have things changed since 9/11?
For Planned Parenthood, things really haven't changed as much as one might think. Long before September 11th, the staff at Planned Parenthood had been concerned about things like letters that threaten anthrax.
Yeah.
So we've been opening the mail differently than most businesses, following security protocols that are different from most healthcare providers for a long time now. So, and I was just, another reporter was interviewing me the other day about this, and I think was trying to get me to the place of saying, well, but everything's different now. And while, yes, I think for the world everything's different now, for the way that Planned Parenthood reports to work in the morning, does its business, serves all of these women, and then goes home at night to rest to come back for the next day, that really hasn't changed as much for us. There have been a rash of these hoax letters that have been going around, you know, letters that basically have, you know, some talcum powder or something inside of them, you know. And I think it's really horrible that someone would be as opportunistic as to take this time of tragedy for the nation and to be doing these sort of hoax and things. The main thing they want to do is they want to try to stop service delivery at Planned Parenthood, and that's not going to happen.
Good.
The staff isn't going to let it happen, and the 26,000 women and men who rely on us and trust us with what is really the most intimate aspects of someone's health care.
Yeah.
We're not going away.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I was going to say, I was just reading the other day, somebody sent me something they got off the internet about Planned Parenthood has been receiving anthrax scares since threats and suspicious mail since 1997. The anthrax thing has been, or 98. And it apparently wasn't through the whole country, but various, not just Planned Parenthood, but other abortion providers.
And not just abortion providers. The other thing that our detractors would have everyone believe is that there are abortion providers, and then there are people who provide women's health care.
Oh.
Abortion care, although the last resort, hopefully can be prevented and avoided, it is an integral part of full women's service. If you are going to take care of a woman and her reproductive health care needs, and you're going to open up a healthcare operation to do that, there will be times that women become pregnant when they do not want to be. Some women will continue those pregnancies, and some women will choose not to. So when I look at that, it's important to remember the kind of vilification of clinics has occurred also to places that just provide family planning services, contraceptives, places that just provide sexuality education to youth and families. Because it's not just about abortion in the minds of our detractors. It's about the whole host of services Planned Parenthood provides.
I'm sure. Well, they don't
We've had
believe in-
some people suggest to us, well, if you just stop providing abortion, maybe all this would go away. It's only 3% of your patient load. And that's true, it is. But the protesters wouldn't stop there. Then they'd want us to stop providing family planning. Then they would want us to stop providing responsible sex education to young people and their families. It wouldn't stop. So I see it as this is a package deal of services. They are inextricably related, and we will continue to provide them.
Back to the Comstock days, that censorship of anything having to do with sexuality.
And it won't stop until it gets back to that. And that's why I'm not willing to compromise on this.
Well, I know, of course, that long before you started having the abortion services, which are fairly recently.
Just the last few years.
You were always having problems with people picketing out there.
And it started from the beginning. In the early part of the 1900s, the minute Margaret Sanger opened up her clinic in New York, there has always been a small group of religious extremists who oppose the work of what has now come to be called Planned Parenthood. The name Planned Parenthood wasn't even invented until the mid-1940s. So long before then, there were family planning clinics, clinics providing diaphragms, the most popular contraceptive of that era, and those clinics were vilified by a very small, very loud
That's
group
the
of people.
trouble. They're so loud.
The overwhelming majority of America is very, very much in favor of Planned Parenthood's mission and services. But this small, vocal minority creates a political climate that makes people wonder whether or not they should publicly support, give voice to their support for Planned Parenthood services.
Well, I just, it's so hard for me to understand why people don't want to progress. They want to go back and live with the Taliban or something and treat women terrible, and they're just breeding machines, and that's it. But, well, I wanted to ask, too, about your outreach programs that you have. Don't you go to high school, send people to talk to young people about...
We do responsible sexuality education programs in lots of different settings. I think in the minds of most Americans, I think when they think about sex education, they think about, the talk, or the film,
the birds and the bees.
or the class, and it's always the singular, as though there will be one book, or one class period, or one 20-minute video, and then we will never need to talk about the vast number of important things related to sexual health and responsibility. What Planned Parenthood does is tries to work with, whether it be schools, community-based organizations. There are a handful of churches and religious groups that invite us in to help with what they're doing. Youth development centers, community centers, and to work with them in a variety of ways. Number one, provide sexuality education programs. Give children and their families the information they need. Secondly, though, work with the staff. Help them become better equipped to answer questions. 3 weeks from now, when Planned Parenthood's educators are no longer there, questions will come up. The staff need to be able to answer those questions. Work with the parents. Help them understand you're the primary sex educator of your child. If you say nothing about this at all, you will still communicate more than anyone else, so that families are able to teach their kids what they need to know. Children turn into adults who have the ability to make responsible decisions, and then unintended pregnancy and parenting might be reduced.
Tell me, do you find that parents are still as squeamish as they were in my day to talk?
No, not at all.
Better?
I think that a few things have happened, and I was thinking about this in something I wrote a couple of months ago. A couple of decades ago, our detractors were fighting us on the sex education front, saying there should be no sex education. Not at home, not at school, not at temple, not at youth center, nowhere. They lost that battle.
I would hope so.
The overwhelming majority of parents realize information about sexual health and responsibility is going to necessarily be part of a child's upbringing. But the debate has shifted now. Now it's, what should the content of sex education be? Should it be information about contraceptive methods, or should it only be a message about you ought not have sex? And that's where I see some of the squeamishness, as you say. I think there is a healthy dose of questioning out there. Well, which way should we go? And like with all complex things in life, it's not either or, it is both and. We need to tell young people postponing sexual involvement is, of course, the most certain way to avoid these negative outcomes. But people will not postpone forever. At some point, a person decides to have sex, whether that be at 16, 18, or 25, we're not going to be there to stop them. Before that time comes, we need to be sure that young people are equipped with the information and have access to the medical services they need so that every act of sex does not lead to conception. If you look to any adult married couple, you're not going to find people who want to conceive every time sex occurs. The use of contraceptives to see to it that procreation is limited, this is not a radical idea. This is mainstream healthcare. And I think our detractors would have us think that this isn't. But in our work with parents, I think parents are a little perplexed as to how am I going to have these conversations, what will be the way to establish rapport with my teenager to talk about this. But I don't come across parents who think that nothing should be said. People know something needs to be said, they're just still a little perplexed as to exactly what to say and how to get it done.
Well, I think it is a difficult thing that I just wondered if over the years, you know, it had loosened up a bit where people are not so squeamish, as I said, about talking to
I think we're
their
making
children.
progress. I see real progress. I started working in this field by doing sex education with families, and even in the 13 years that I've been working in this type of healthcare, I've seen a change in how people respond.
Well, that's good. That's progress, right? That's
Little by little.
Well, even if they'll take them somewhere where they can get the information or see
And
to it
that's
they
one of the
get
great
it, they
things
don't
that
have to do
Planned
it.
Parenthood's programs become. We become a catalyst for the community center who's been wanting to do a parent-child night on sex and responsibility, and they don't know how to get it done. Well, then Planned Parenthood trained educators can come in and say, yes, invite the kids in, invite the parents in. We'll bring in a couple of facilitators. We'll do a workshop that'll be informative, it'll be fun. And then maybe that jump starts that family, so they go home, and now that family has an experience to talk about. Remember when we all learned. And then maybe it gives the parents, when they want to bring it up again in 6 months, there's some sort of a springboard to work with.
Right.
And I think that's something that we do that is enormously helpful to families.
Oh, I think everybody should take advantage of that. Well, we're winding up here, and I wondered if there was anything in particular you wanted to touch on in the last 30 seconds we had. We
can't do this alone. If you like what Planned Parenthood is doing, we need your help.
Yeah, well, you got me on your side, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Just wish I had, well, I can't talk about that. But and one more thing, I just recently had a chance to meet Emily Lyons, greatest moment. Wonderful lady, wonderful, brave soul. And I missed her here. You know, you had her here to speak.
She's been through a lot.
I should say so, and nobody has really, she said, why? We're so excited about terrorism. Now, she said, we've had it all along. Well, we're getting a wrap, so it's goodbye from Freethought Forum. Thanks for tuning in.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no person can deny. Die Gedanken